Hi, everybody. My name is Miss Amber, and I'm here with your English 11A reading resources for today. Now, we've gone over a couple other readings from the second lesson in Unit 1, which is the American Indian Voice. In the previous lesson, we went over how the Spaniards came to Shomopovi and review some of the analysis for that. So today, we're going to be reading through excerpts from Plymouth Plantation by William Bradford, and we're going to go over just the text and make sure that everyone understands the order of what's happening. So I'm just going to hop right in. Going to get started. This should be for students who have already gone through the tutorial and tried to get through the reading selections once already. Or if you happen to have like special accommodations or you have reading comprehension issues and you just want the review, that's what these videos are for. But this reading selection does not show up until slide 24. The only other way that you can access this, let me go ahead and move myself up into the corner, is if you hit this folder for resources, you can go to Of Plymouth Plantation, and it should open it up for you. On this slide 24, there's this link here. So you can hit either one of these if you're trying to reach the links. And then if you open it up here, it's the same text, but the link that's here is separate just because they want students that are having issues, students that are having issues with actually getting through the text the first time to be able to have a resource as well. The Admentum text is only available if you've gotten to the slide. So if you're having difficulty getting there, that other link is available. So we're going to look at this version of it. The text should be the same, though. And it says, from starving time. It's Of Plymouth Plantation, chapter 11. That X is 10 in Roman numerals, and the one next to it means +1, so that would be 11. Just to keep in mind, while we're going through the text, as per usual, if you've seen any of my other videos, when we come across words that are difficult or don't make sense or that I think are not very common, we will actually pause in the middle of reading to look it up. And the reason why I do this is to encourage students to stop and look up things while they are also going through the materials. It is a lot easier to remember words that you've had to spend time looking up yourself. And I want to encourage every student to do that, whether it's on a reading selection or if you're going through the test, just because that sort of thing is actually very helpful. Just to get started, we're also going to read this in chunks. So since this paragraph is really big, maybe once every 3 or 4 sentences, we'll stop and make sure, just to go back. I'll add a summary of what's happening to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. So it says, in these hard and difficult beginnings, we're starting right here. In these hard and difficult beginnings, they found some discontents and murmurings rise amongst some, and mutinous speeches and carriages in other. But they were soon quelled and overcome by the wisdom, patience, and just and equal range of things by the governor, and better part which clove faithfully together in the main. So there's a lot of things underlined here just to make sure that you understand. So in these hard and difficult beginnings, we're talking about the beginnings of the plantation, the Plymouth Plantation. They found some discontents and murmurings. So content is when you are happy or satisfied. So discontent is the opposite of that. So they found some discontent, that means not happy things, and murmurings, when you murmur, you're muttering something very quietly, rise amongst some. So they're saying that some people give you, some of the people at the plantation basically had complaints, and they were murmuring amongst each other. And then some said in mutinous speeches and carriages in other. So mutinous speeches basically means, like people were threatening to revolt and leave and change the leadership that was there. When you're looking at what mutiny is, like if we were to double click this, highlight it and look up this word, mutinous here, you can go to search Google. Mutinous is a soldier or sailor or just anyone refusing to obey the orders of a person in authority or willful and disobedient. So usually if you are mutinous, you're going to overturn the tide of power. You don't want to listen to anyone or anything. You're not following authority. And then it says, but they, that means these ideas, were soon quelled. And the word here, it's underlined and turned green, although it's a little hard to see, to let you know they give you the separate definition. So when you hover, it says to suppress, repress, or stifle, particularly with regard to things considered bad or disagreeable. So they're saying that all of these unhappy and mutinous, like, trying to usurp or push other people out of power, all of these ideas were quelled. So they were repressed or suppressed, pushed down, and overcome by the wisdom, patience, and just equal a range of things by the governor and better part, which clove stuck together faithfully together in the main. So clove means stuck together. So the wisdom, patience, and just and equal a range of things by the governor. So they're saying that the governor being wise, having patience, and arranging things equally among the people helped to push down all of those murmurings about, bucking up against the power or fighting or trying to break the organization, the group apart. Now, when you hover over the majority of this sentence, you also get a question. The question says, writing conventions have changed considerably. That means a lot. Enough for you to consider. That's what considerably means. Since the colonial period. Read this opening sentence carefully, taking the colonial influence into consideration. So what is Bradford saying here? So that's basically just what we did. We tried to break down the words that were in the sentence to get a better idea of what was going on. Establishing things was difficult in the beginning. There were some people who didn't like what leadership was telling them to do. That might have caused problems. But the governor was wise and patient, and he tried to make sure that things were equal among the people. And that made things a bit better. It helped everyone to pull together. And then in the second sentence, it says, but that which was sad, most sad and lamentable. Lamentable means basically like you can mourn it. Lamentable, like you would cry over it. So that which was most sad and lamentable was that in 2 or 3 months' time, half of their company died, especially in January. And February being the depth, that means like a deep part of winter, and wanting houses and other comforts. So the saddest thing here is that half the people in the group died, especially in January. And then it says because February's in the depth, that means like deep part. So February being in the depth of winter and wanting houses and other comforts. So these people are just sort of stranded at Plymouth, and they're dying because of the colds, and they wish they could go back to like England and have the accommodations that they would normally have in their hometowns. And then it says, being infected with the scurvy and other diseases, which this long voyage and their inaccommodate condition. So if you're accommodating someone, it means that you are doing things to help make them comfortable. So inaccommodate, that means the opposite of that. Inaccommodate means that the condition that they were in, since the next word is condition, was not comfortable at all. So again, being infected with scurvy and other diseases, which this long voyage in their inaccommodate condition had brought upon them. So as there died sometimes 2 or 3 of a day in the foresaid time, that of 100 and odd persons, scarce 50 remain. So they're giving you information here about everyone and how many they started with, how many people there are now. Now, earlier in this section, we said being infected with scurvy and other diseases. Other diseases tells us that scurvy is considered a disease. And if you hover over it, it tells you that it is a debilitating disease. So debilitating means that it makes you weak. It makes you waste away. And it's caused by a lack of vitamin C. It was nearly impossible for the colonists to acquire fruit, which was really the only way means of warding off scurvy at the time. So they were in the cold, wanting to have homes, missing where they used to be, and they were infected with scurvy, other diseases. And it says that, so as there died sometimes 2 or 3 in a day. And that of the 100 and so people that were originally there, only 50 remained. So they talked about, like half of their company died in the sentence before. So what we're getting from this picture is they're giving kind of like a summary of how messed up things were for people in this time while they were stranded at Plymouth. And then it says, and of these in the time of most distress, so while people were dying, there was but 6 or 7 sound, that means like logical or fair persons, who to their great commendations be it spoken, and if you hover, it says a show of approval. So great commendations means you've been awarded favor, or people believe in you, people approve. So these 6 or 7 sound persons were logical, they were reasonable, and people respected them. Be it spoken, spare no pains night nor day, but with abundance of toil and hazard to their own health, fetched them wood, made them fires, dressed the meat, made their beds, washed their loathsome, that means disgusting or repulsive clothes, clothed and unclothed them. So they're saying that of the 100 people who were here, there are 6 or 7 who were taking care of the sick, right? That's pretty much what they're saying. So in a word, did all the homely and necessary offices for them. So offices is like official duties. So if we were to look this up and we search Google for it, right? So we know what offices are in terms of the place, but we're looking for other definitions. So if we come down here, right, we've got a room or a set of rooms. That's what we would normally think of for an office. But we also have a position of authority or service, especially service, typically one of a public nature. So what they're telling us here is the word offices is the service, right? So they did all of the homely, as in things that you would get at home, and necessary offices or services for them, which dainty and queasy stomachs cannot endure to hear named. So dainty means like fragile or weak here. And queasy is people that are nauseous and can't stand things. So basically, what they're saying is that these 6 or 7 people did all of this work to take care of those who were sick. And when they say all of the offices or services, which dainty or queasy stomachs can't endure to hear named, they're saying that these 6 or 7 people tended to the sick, and that means in all ways, right? So that means these people are helping to feed them, cleaning up, like vomit or excrement, helping them clean up after they go to the bathroom. And those are things that people normally don't talk about. It usually makes people queasy or uncomfortable. So that's what's being referenced here. And then it says, and all this willingly and cheerfully, without any grudging in the least. So they're saying these people who were taking care of the sick did it willingly because they wanted to, and cheerfully, which means happily. Without any grudging. Grudging means like to hold a grudge or to be bitter or resentment. Showing herein their true love unto their friends and brethren. So this is a very long-winded way of saying that out of the 50 people who were left, there were 6 or 7 people that helped take care of everybody by doing the chores that needed to be done. It says, a rare example and worthy to be remembered. 2 of these were Mr. William Brewster, their Reverend Elder, and Miles Standish, their captain and military commander. And then it says, unto whom myself and many others were much beholden in our low and sick condition. So when they say unto whom myself, he's saying including, I am one of the people along with many others. Um, much beholden to means that you owe them. So the person who is writing this, William Bradford, is saying that he and the other people that were cared for by these two people and the others are in debt. That's what beholden means, in our low and sick condition. So he's just saying, here's two examples of people that we definitely owe for helping us in this way. It says, yet the Lord so upheld these persons, as in this general calamity they were in. They were not at all infected either with sickness or lameness. So he's getting a little, religious here. So he's saying that he believes God, the Lord, upheld them. That means pushed them upwards, lifted them. So that in this general calamity, that means in this terrible time, right? Calamity, deep distress, or misery, that they were not at all infected by sickness or lameness. So he's saying he thinks that God is the reason why they didn't get sick while they were taking care of everyone. And then it says, as what I have said of these, I may say many others who died in this general visitation, and others yet living, that whilst they had health, yea, or any strength continuing, they were not wanting to any that need of them. And I doubt not, but their recompense is with the Lord. So in this last sentence of the paragraph, he's saying, and what I have said of these, so what he's saying of these two people, I may say of many others who died in this general visitation. So he's saying that even though the Lord kept these two people, there were some caretakers who died while they were visiting or helping the sick. And then he says, and others yet living. So he's saying that there's some people who helped them that died and some people who helped them that are still alive. And he would say the same kind things about all of these people that he said about William Brewster from the last sentence and Miles Standish. And then it says that whilst they had health, so even those who were living and those who died while they had health or any strength to continue, they were not wanting to any that had need of them. So they were not wanting to any that had need of them. What he's saying is that while these people were healthy and they never left anyone needing care that needed them to take care of them. So they didn't leave anybody hanging, is pretty much what he's saying. And then he says, and I doubt not that their recompense is with the Lord. So he's saying of the people who died or who did end up getting sick, he's sure that God is going to repay them for the work that they've done here. So if we take a look at this big paragraph in a very umbrella sort of way, just to give a general summary, what this paragraph is doing is talking about the start of the Plymouth Plantation and how difficult things were. People were sick with scurvy, other diseases. There were a lot of people dying. Half of the people who were originally with them ended up dying. And then he spends the rest of the paragraph talking about the great and respected people who took care of the sick. He names two of them. They're two men, right? And talks about how they didn't get sick or anything while they were taking care of everyone, which he considers, like a miracle. And then he also says that of the people who did get sick or who did die, or anyone who took care of the others while they were in good health, he's sure that what they're owed, the things that they deserve because they helped everyone out, is held in the Lord's hands and God's hands. Alrighty, now we've got this one last excerpt here, and this is from Indian Relations. So even though these are both from the same chapter 11, these are two separate entries. So in this second entry, we start off with, all this while the Indians came skulking about them and would sometimes show themselves aloof off, but when any approached near them, they would run away. So let's break this down. All this while the Indians came skulking about them. So there's a question here that they want you to consider. We're going to interpret the sentence first, and then we'll come back. So if you highlight skulking and we look it up, right? So skulking is to keep out of sight, typically with a sinister or cowardly motive. And then it says here to move stealthily or furtively. So you're sneaking around, basically. Keeping out of sight, that's kind of sneaking around. So all this while the Indians came, sneaking around them is basically how you could think of the sentence. And would sometimes throw themselves aloof. So aloof says without empathy or feeling. So aloof is when you're just pretending that nothing has anything to do with you. You're sort of pretending you're not involved. And then it says, but when any approached near them, they would run away. So they're showing the behavior of the American Indians here. They would sneak around kind of observing the colonists and will pretend that they're not watching them. But when they approached, or when they were approached by the colonists, then they would run away, or the settlers. Now, if we come back to this question, it says, why do you think the previous reading section, starving time, is necessary to understand Indian relations? So this is a question that's better answered at the end. So we'll come back to this when we get to the end. And it says, and once they stole away their tools where they had been at work and were gone to dinner. So they're saying the American Indians stole some of the settlers' tools while they were at dinner. Then it says, but about the 16th of March, a certain Indian came boldly amongst them and spoke to them in their broken English, which they could well understand, but marveled at it. So this is pretty straightforward. The 16th of March is a date. A certain Indian, so someone specifically, came boldly. They felt showing up was a bold move amongst the settlers and spoke to them in broken English. So this person could actually speak English. And then it says, which they, that means the settlers, could well understand, but marveled at it. So marveled means to think that something is amazing. You're like in awe. So they could understand the broken English, and they were also shocked and surprised, in awe that the Indian could actually speak English. Now, if we hover over this sentence, we get this box which says, how does this meeting differ from the first interaction between the Spanish and the Hopi? Now, the Hopi reference is from the previous reading lecture. A previous reading lecture is from the Spaniards came to Shungapopi. You definitely should have read this one before you got to this one. So they're asking you to reflect on how this first interaction with the Plymouth Plantation settlers is different from the Hopi tribe's first meeting with the Spaniards. And then it says here, at length they understood by discourse is conversation, discourse with him, that's the American Indian, that he was not of these parts, but belonged to the eastern parts, where some English ships came to fish, with whom he was acquainted, and could name sundry of them of their names, amongst whom he had got his language. So this certain Indian that they're referring to is someone who spoke with them and explained that he was from further east, where some of the English came to fish, and it says he was acquainted. That means he knew them, and he could name sundry of them and their names. So he could name off some of those people and some of the people in charge. And those are the people that he got his language from. That's how he learned English. So he's explaining where he's from and how he knows English. It says, he became profitable to them in acquainting them with many things concerning the state of the country in the east parts where he lived, which was afterwards profitable unto them. And also of the people, here of their names, number and strength, of their situation and distance from this place, and who is chief among them. So he became profitable to them. That means he became valuable. And acquainting, helping him get to know, helping. So he's telling the settlers, acquainting them, information about what's going on in the easternmost parts of like the colonies. So that's what they mean. He's acquainting them. That means helping them get to know things concerning or about the state of the country in the east parts where he lived. And then it also says, which was afterwards profitable unto them. So he's talking about he became useful by giving them useful information. The information that this American Indian is giving them is useful to them now and is useful to them later. And then the second part, as also of the people here of their names, numbers, and strength. So he's basically giving them information, names of people who are important, how many people are in those settlements and things, of their distance, of their situation and distance from this place, and who was chief amongst them. So he's pretty much giving them all information about who's who in the East, their names, number, and strength, like who they can look forward to seeing so that they're not surprised and they know who they're going to encounter potentially if they move. It says his name was Somerset, and he told them of another Indian whose name was Squanto, a native of this place who had been in England and could speak better English than himself. So this is more information, giving them more information about Squanto and also his own name. And then it says, being, after some time of entertainment and gifts dismissed, after a while he came again, and 5 more with him, and they brought again all the tools that were stolen away from before, and made way for the coming of their great sachem, called Massasoit. So sachem is a civil or judicial leader, right? So this guy, Somerset, pretty much comes again. So he gave them time of entertainment and gifts. He was dismissed and then came again. So basically, the settlers helped to pay Somerset for his information and then, sort of sent him away, and then he came back. When he came back, he had 5 more with him, and they brought all the tools that were stolen away before, right? So he's helping their relationship with the tribes that are nearby, since he can speak languages that they both understand, that both groups understand. And then the 5 that he came back with and returned the tools with, it says that they made way or space for the coming of their great sachem. So that's a judicial leader. Judicial has to do with judging or the law. And they are giving you this title because it's different from chief. When you hover over it, it says a sachem is a civil meaning having to do with like everyday life of people, and judicial, that means like decisions and law, leader within a tribe. And it says here it's different as opposed is the opposite. So as opposed to the chief, which is a military or oratory leader. Oral means when you're speaking, right? So you get to tell people what to do. So the sachem is just as important as the chief, but they're in charge of other things, judicial for judgment and civil leader. So just the everyday, day-to-day stuff. And he was called Massasoit. And it says, who about 4 or 5 days after came with the chief of his friends and other attendants. So he showed up with the chief and then with the aforesaid Squanto. So Massasoit came there with Squanto. And then it says, with whom, after friendly entertainment and some gifts given him, they made peace with him, which hath now continued this 24 years in these terms. So they had someone, an American Indian named Somerset, came and gave them information about who was in the East and who was important, and helped to give them useful information about what was going on. And then it also introduced them to the sachem Massasoit and the chief Squanto. He also spoke with some of the American Indians in his tribe to have the settlers' tools given back. So he's sort of being like a peacekeeper and like a liaison between both groups. And then it says that they gave Squanto and the tribe gifts and friendly entertainment. So it means that they hosted them, probably helped them have like a dinner or something like that. And then it says that peace hath now continued for 24 years. And then they give you a list of terms that they came to agree with so that both sides could sort of live and exist in peace with one another. So they give you this list of 6 things, and these are pretty straightforward. These don't really have to be interpreted in any special way. So we're going to read through them a little quickly. I might stop at like 5 or 6, but we'll see. It says that neither he nor any of his should injure or do any hurt to their people, to any of their people. So they're talking about the settlers. That if any of his did hurt to any of theirs, he should send the offender that they might punish him. And then that if anything were taken away from any of theirs, he should cause it to be restored, and they should do the like to his. So they're talking about what Squanto is responsible for. He and his people shouldn't injure any of their people, the people of Plymouth, and that if anybody does get hurt, he should send the offender. So Squanto will send the offender from his tribe so that he can be punished. And then it says that if anything was taken away, it should be restored. And the other side, the settlers, should do the same thing if something of the American Indians get stolen. And then it says here, if any did unjustly war against him, against Squanto, they, the settlers, would aid him. If any did war against them, he should aid them. So this is kind of like almost like international policy almost. So they're going to help each other, and the idea is that by working together and defending each other, they have a higher chance of survival. So if anyone attacks Squanto, the settlers would help him, and if anyone attacks the settlers, Squanto would help them. Then we have he should send his to his neighbors' confederates to certify them of this, that they might not wrong them, but might be likewise comprised in the conditions of peace. So should he send to his neighbors' confederates? He's saying if he's so like actually I think it would help if we looked up confederates just to make sure everybody's on the right page about what it means. So we're gonna go for a Confederate definition here, just to make sure everyone knows what it means. So when you hear Confederates, you think of like the Confederate States, right? From when the North and the South were separated. The word Confederate means a person that one works with, especially in something secret or illegal. So you're like secret allies. So here it says, he should send to his neighbors' confederates to certify them of this. So he's saying that he's going to send information to his neighbors and their supporters. So like their secret supporters to certify means to make something official of this, that they might not wrong them. So he's saying that he's going to send word, Squanto is going to send word to the other tribes and people who work with them, even the ones who work with them in secret, so that they all know about this official agreement between Squanto and the settlers. So they want everyone on the same page so that the settlers don't accidentally get attacked. That's what it says, that they might not wrong them. He's trying to prevent other tribes that they have contact with from focusing on the settlers or attacking them. And then it says, but might likewise compromise in the condition of peace. But might be likewise compromised in the conditions of peace. So he's saying that if things don't work out between Squanto and the settlers, then all of that is revoked, right? So he's gonna try to make sure that the other tribes play nice with the settlers. But if things break off between Squanto and the settlers, then it's on, right? He can't stop his allies from attacking the settlers if things crumble between them. And then it says, lastly, that when their men came to them, they should leave their bows and arrows behind them. So that was part of the agreement, that the people of Squanto, when coming into the settlement of the Plymouth Plantation, should leave their bows and arrows behind them, because the English settlers felt like that was hostile. So then it says, after these things, he returned to his place called Solom's, which was 40 miles from this place. But Squanto continued with them and was their interpreter. and was a special instrument sent of God for their good beyond expectation. So this is William, Bradley giving his opinions on things. So pretty much they made this deal with Massasoit and Squanto. So they're saying that Massasoit returned, because remember, he's the one who came to deal with this. So like Squanto the chief was with them to officiate things, but Massasoit negotiated on behalf of his people because he's the civil leader. So after they got to this agreement, Massasoit and Squanto and the settlers, Massasoit went back to Soams, but Squanto continued going back and forth with the settlers. So Squanto's group was closer by than Massasoit's group, is what it sounds like. And Squanto stayed close by. He was their interpreter, and was a special instrument sent of God. So William Bradley saying he thinks that the American Indians here were a gift from God for good beyond their expectation. He directed them, so Squanto directed them on how to set their corn. Can I scroll down? No, I can't. Okay. He directed them on how to set their corn, where to take fish, and to procure other commodities, and was also their pilot to bring them to unknown places for their profit, and never left them until he died. So it says here, obviously the first part, he directed them on how to set their corn, so like how to plant, where to take fish, so where to fish in the rivers and lakes. And also procure means to acquire or to get, so how to get other commodities. And here, if you hover over it, they give you this definition. Commodities is a product or service that is for sale or use. So how to get things for themselves that they would normally have to buy. And then it says he was also their pilot, so that means he's directing them on where to go, to bring them to unknown places for their profit. So if there were places in the area that had things that they needed or that were useful, Squanto would take them to those places so they wouldn't have to be in that much danger. And it says he never left them until he died, and he was a native of this place, and scarce any left alive besides himself. So pretty much Squanto wasn't just from the tribe that was nearby. He was a native of this place. So that means he was born and raised in the place where the Plymouth Plantation was then, right? And since a lot of native tribes were nomads and they moved around every few years to, like, they stayed in the same area, but they moved so that they didn't strip all the resources from like the earth, right? So what they're implying here is that Squanto was born in the area where the settlers were, and he knew the area well, which is why he could give them directions and show them where to plant things and how to do stuff. So he stayed since he knew the area well and gave them that information. And then, and scarce any left alive besides himself. He's saying that Squanto is one of the only people, or was one of the only people, who was born and raised in that area that was still alive. So pretty much he was one of their only few options about learning about the location. And that's pretty much it. So these two excerpts tell you about how hard things were for the settlers when they first got there. People getting sick, how many of them died since they first settled there, the people in their community that helped to take care of them. Two of them were named, a lot of them were not named. Some of them did not live, some of them did. And then this second excerpt explains how they had contact with the American Indians, how they came upon one person who knew English from the East and had learned how to speak it. So he kind of offered to broker a friendship between him and the same tribe that Massasoit and Squanto were from. And basically, it just explains that the settlers tried to give the American Indians like gifts to get on their good side and negotiate with them. And they came up with a peace pact that has these 6 rules on it. And then Squanto gave them information about how to survive in the place where they were better than they currently were. So that's the end of the excerpt. We're going to close this and look at some of the analysis for this. So there's just one page of analysis because this is pretty straightforward. There's not really a whole lot to break down. There's just background information about who's meant what, you know. Again, keep in mind these three questions. Why did the American Indians approach the colonists after starving time? What events and hardships are unique to the colonial period? And what elements of Bradford's style indicate his writing was from the colonial period? So these are things that were in the previous slides, especially the colonial period writing. They want you to look at that list of things that they gave you and try to find proof of those things in the Plymouth Plantation excerpts. Now, on slide 25, they give you just a little bit of analysis, right? So they pretty much tell you that the Plymouth Plantation is an important piece of literature because it addresses subjects at the time, like the hardships of colonization. That's how hard it was to survive once you got there. And the colonist interactions with the American Indians. And you can tell that Bradford was influenced by his religious convictions. Like he mentions God a lot, and the things that are good happen as a blessing. He references those very specifically. And you can pretty much see that, especially because it says his narrative, that means the story, is centered in the belief that the Plymouth colony's fate was guided by divine providence. So he really does think that, you know, God sent the American Indians to help them. And then it says here, literary and linguistic, so that means things that we read and things that we speak, right? How we speak. Conventions or rules have changed since Bradford's time. Bradford's technique, syntax, that means the way he puts his sentences together, and vocabulary are representative of the colonial method of speaking and writing. So I just want you to note the way that he decides to write out his information was just how people were expected to write at the time. And then it says the structure of the opening sentence from the chapter of starving time of Plymouth Plantation is formal and complex. And like, just to give you a taste of it again, we're going to open the tab back up. And I'm just going to read this first part so you can hear with your ears by comparison to how we speak today, how different it is. In these hard and difficult beginnings, they found some discontents and murmurings arise amongst some, and mutinous speeches and carriages in other. But they were soon quelled and overcome by the wisdom, patience, and just and equal arrange of things by the governor and better part which clove faithfully together in the main. So you can tell just by listening that that sentence is very different. The style is wordy, so that means there's a lot of words in description, and uses now archaic terms such as clove. So wordy in description is saying they use a lot of words to describe things that don't need that much description. And then archaic means old. So now old terms like clove, which is the past tense of cleave, which means to firmly adhere, right? So if you've clove something together, the way they explained it when you hovered over it, clove something means to push things together, right? So when you, for example, cleave in two, right, with like a sword, the idea, yes, you're cutting someone to pieces, but you have to actually bring the sword in contact with their body to do that. And I use that example because that's usually the only way that we see the word cleave or clove in text these days. It's usually part of like a video game or like an old style movie where someone is saying that. So you have to bring the sword and the person who you're attacking like together firmly. You know, when you strike someone, it's very hard, right? So you're bringing those things firmly adhere. Adhere is to stick together. It's like if you've ever heard the word like adhesive, that's what that means. So to firmly adhere is to push together like very hard. So if the people are being clove together, or that means that they're being brought together strongly by something. The syntax, that means the way they put the sentence together, is odd by modern standards, using phrases such as they found some discontents rather than the modern they were discontented. So they found some discontents means they found some things to be unhappy about instead of just saying they were unhappy, right? Because England and America had not yet diverged. Diverge means to go separate ways. So because they hadn't gone separate ways in language and literature, Bradford's writing also represents the style of English literature at the time. And I feel like you can sort of tell this just by reading it. I think that when most people think of old time structure for like writing and speaking, they think of England because they know that American English came from English. And the reason why they're one and the same at this point is because American English had not started going off on its own to form its own structure or ways of speaking yet. And that's pretty much it for this reading selection. I'm going to stop sharing. So the writing was a little bit complicated for that excerpt, but even though the writing was complicated, the story that was being told was pretty simple. It was people trying to survive and needing to get help from the American Indians, and they were kind enough to help, especially after literally half of the group of settlers died over the winter. So hopefully this review helped. If you're still having difficulty with understanding what's going on in this excerpt, please book a tutoring session. You can reach out to your teacher or your advocate, and they'll put you in touch with whoever it is that you need to be in touch with. And we'll, go over it with you to try to make sure that you get a little extra detail. Okay? Alrighty, that is it for me. And this is also the last excerpt for this lesson. So if you're looking at these in order, we'll be resuming with some things from the next lesson, which is colonial literature. Alrighty, this is Miss Amber signing off, and good luck with your English class.